Hello, and welcome to another episode of I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. In today's podcast, I'm joined by Kaamil Salojee, who moved here from South Africa about 10 years ago. He shares his story about growing up in Johannesburg and one of the more violent neighborhoods in that area, and why he came here. And he also shares about apartheid, what that was, the abolishment of apartheid in 1994 under Nelson Mandela. His grandfather worked with Nelson Mandela as the External Affairs Minister. I think I'm getting that correct. So anytime a celebrity came, his grandfather would meet with him, which is very exciting. And he's moving back to South Africa, and he shares sort of his insights on some of the movements that are going on around the world, COVID, and it was just a really good conversation, and I'm excited to share it with you. So thank you for listening, and hope you enjoy. Bye now. All right, today I'm joined by Kaamil Salojee. We got some of this scotch here.
Glendalough.
It's good stuff.
That's pretty smooth.
Yeah. So we're talking today about with everything going on in the States, right? With the Black Lives Matter movement, with COVID, perhaps there's different perspectives and there's different histories from countries that we can learn from. And Kaamil is originally from South Africa, born and raised there, and South Africa has a pretty long-going history with race and government policies around that. In 1948, they introduced apartheid. Can you explain kind of what that was?
So apartheid was the segregation of races. So they basically what happened was white people had a lot more rights as opposed to non-whites. So it wasn't whites and blacks; it was whites and non-whites. And so, for example, whites could go to better hospitals, have better schooling, get better education, where non-blacks were not allowed to do those things. Or non-whites were not allowed to do those things. Apartheid ended up segregating each race into different groups. So they had white communities, and they had black communities, they had colored communities, and they had Indian communities. And each race lived in those groups.
Right.
And they were not supposed to be outside of those groups unless it was, I think at one point they had to work inside the areas as well. But if they got a job outside, they had to get almost a passport.
Like a working visa.
Basically, yeah,
right.
To be working in that area, to be in that area.
Whoa. Okay.
So if a black person needed to work as a domestic worker or maid in a white area, they had a pass. We used to call it a dome pass, which translates to stupid pass. But it was basically a work visa in the white area.
And were those only issued for working in the white areas?
I'm not too sure if it was working like in an Indian area or
right.
as well, or if those kind of just more fell off. I have no idea. But I know definitely if they were working in a white area, they needed a pass.
And I imagine that at this time, during apartheid, the white communities, like you're saying, had more of the wealth.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, you're going to have like a middle class and lower class, white, whatever, but generally white people were a little bit more wealthier than non-whites because they had opportunities to better jobs and better education and stuff, right? So with that comes better positions in life.
And why in South Africa did the whites get better jobs and more money, do you think?
Well, at one point they were the ones that were allowed to get the better jobs and better positions. You wouldn't see a black person in a management position. South Africa during apartheid, it was unseen, unheard of. they weren't allowed to.
And I assume that most people in government at this time, they were all white people.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wrote about this in one of my blog posts. It's that when whoever's in power, they're going to influence the voters, right? So when you just have one group with all the power, they're going to continue to stay in power because they're able to keep getting the votes, right?
Well, in South Africa, non-whites were not allowed to vote. And obviously that's...
So anybody who was... So that includes colored,
Yep,
black, Indian.
Yep, not allowed to vote.
Well, that makes it a bit of a problem, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah. In 1990, when Nelson Mandela was released from prison, there was, I think that was when, just after the elections, Nelson Mandela was released from prison, and the new president of the country made mention that they were allowed to vote. Non-whites to vote.
Okay. So, and this is in 1990?
1990, yeah.
Wow.
So...
Not that long ago. 30 years.
Yeah, 30 years ago. It's not long. They made mention that they will allow non-whites to vote in the next elections.
Right.
Which was 1994. And that's when apartheid ended in 1994.
So in 1994, Nelson Mandela was voted the president?
Yeah.
Okay, and then he got rid of apartheid.
Yeah, basically that's as soon as we have democratic parties, right? So you elect the party.
Yes.
So that was the ANC, which is still in president right now.
The ANC.
Yeah, which is African National Congress.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're still in power till today.
Okay. And are they doing well?
There's no, they're not doing well. There's so much corruption in government. The ANC is terrible, and they should have been voted out a long time ago. But there's I think a lot of it is loyalty to the ANC, especially amongst older people, right? It's a loyalty to the ANC,
right?
Because this is the party they got us out of apartheid. So there's lots of loyalty towards ANC.
Is there fear that if another party were to get in, that apartheid would be reinstated?
I don't think in today's world apartheid could happen again. But there is the party has a lot of power to make the different choices inside the country, right? So there could be issues. So there is a fear, like there is parties that are predominantly white in South Africa still that would be a questionable choice,
Right.
But
almost like extreme right people here.
Yeah.
So what are they called?
I don't even know the name of their party actually. I'm not even sure.
Yeah. Are they almost like? Would you compare them to, say, like Nazis?
I wouldn't compare.
Maybe not that extreme.
Yeah, not that extreme.
Okay.
I wouldn't compare them to Nazis, but they're definitely more for like whites. I think it's the same. I think it might be the same party that was in power in South Africa in apartheid that they're still kind of kicking around, or one that is like that. I'm not even too sure because I mean I've been out of there for almost 10 years.
Yes.
South Africa, right? So but for now, I think the main ones is ANC and the DA. There's the ones that are mostly competing.
DA.
Yeah.
Is that Democratic Alliance?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that was a good guess.
Is it? Yeah, I think it is.
I had no idea. Yeah. So essentially, you have a two-party country.
No, it's the majority is always ANC. It's always been ANC.
Right.
But the two strongest parties are DA and ANC. ANC obviously always winning, but DA is the next one that, if anybody would not vote for ANC, most likely they would vote for DA.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
But again, because of corruption, it almost seems like the ANC is always going to keep winning.
That's what it seems like. Yeah.
Yeah. Who is the current? Is it a president?
Yeah.
Who is the current president?
His name is Cyril Ramaphosa.
Okay.
He seems to be doing an okay job. Much better than our previous president. I don't know if you've heard of him. Jacob Zuma.
No.
Oh man, Jacob Zuma. He's just he was a case and a half. He's done so much corrupt stuff. He was involved in so much corruption in the country, and yeah, it was bad.
And when we talk about corruption, are we talking about like extortion of money?
Oh yeah, like buying like a $30 million house.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, he's like, yeah, he's got a lot of like weird things, and he's actually not like, he's not a smart guy. He's pretty dumb. He's not really very well educated. There's videos of him like everyone making fun of him because there was one thing. He went like in a speech. He went to say in the beginning. But he's like, in the beginning, and he's like trying to say it. In the beginning.
Oh, he kept trying to go.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's another one of him trying to like read numbers. And like, so, like maybe you get like a 6-figure number. You can't read the 6-figure number,
right. So there's a lot of whatever this is, right? You can say the number, yeah.
But Cyril Ramaphosa he's a little bit better.
Is he aware? Like, does he identify the corruption? Does he talk about it?
He does not talk about it. No.
Which always kind of makes me skeptical.
Yeah, no, for sure. He's very quiet. He's like just really quiet. He comes on TV once in a while, and he's been doing it now at least once a month to address the nation about the COVID or whatever.
Right.
And they came up with a really good plan, like a 5-phase plan to drop COVID out or whatever, right?
Similar to here.
Yeah, similar to here. They're in, I think, phase 3 right now.
Okay.
But
it's funny because every country and every province in Canada is different. Like, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5 is normal, and other ones go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you're like, whoa, where are we? Right? Like, so.
5 being the worst and 1 being the best.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
I think 5 here in BC is us being like, okay, we're good to go. Which is kind of confusing.
Yeah, it is kind of confusing.
When you think of DEFCON 5, it's the president's dead. Right? Like, 5, right? So, so he's addressed that issue. Now, and we've talked about, there's sort of these 5 major racial groups in South Africa.
Yeah, I would probably say 4: black, coloreds, whites, and Indians.
What do you mean by colored in Africa?
So
in South Africa,
colored is what I would say is many generations of black and white mixed.
Right.
So if you imagine a black and a white person get together and they have a baby, and their baby meets a baby from, or like gets a baby from another person that was also mixed like that, right? So it's become many generations of that, with a little bit of things like thrown in between, like sprinkle of Indian, like
spicy,
So there's a little bit of like a touch of black, sprinkle of Indian, like, so there's a little bit of more mixing or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would generally be the colored race, is where mostly black and white mix is what they would say, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, and I'm clearly a white person. In places like the United States and in Canada, we usually refer to, someone who's black, right? Instead of saying they're an African Canadian or they're an African American, because they might be from the Caribbean, or they might be from Britain, right? They could be from anywhere. So to say, they're an African Canadian, it's sort of like, well, that's actually not where I'm from.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So which category do you fall under?
So most people would see me in South Africa as colored.
Right.
Yeah. They would see me as a colored person.
Is that what you would identify as? Like, I don't know how you say that properly.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say if we're going to be classified, I would say colored person. I disagree with everybody being classified. But,
yes. Yeah. But at one point, that's what they did.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, end of the day, I would end up getting classified as colored.
Right. Now, when you're in South Africa, you're friends with everybody, right?
Yeah, I have a white friend.
That's good. You got one. It's good. He's represented. Now, since apartheid was abolished in 1994, is there still a lot of prejudice in South Africa?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that stems back from everybody being classified and being sorted into their own racial groups. So now, inside those communities, you're building hatred towards anybody outside of the communities. Not really building hatred, but just growing wary of them. Say,
They're outsiders.
They're outsiders, yeah. It's like somebody comes into my townhouse complex. Who's this guy? Like, so it's kind of like that. Except it's like a whole suburb or whatever or area. So people they have grown like that there, and now I think what's happened a bit is, children are being taught like, a white person is like that, a black person is like that, so it's kind of it doesn't really end, because you have these people that have grown up with like being segregated, like my parents were segregated. I wasn't. I was right at the end of apartheid, right? So I have no clue. So if my parents like had me in an area and told me that like black people are like this or like white people are like that, like that's what I was going to be listening to, So I'm lucky my parents are not like that. They're very more. That's where I get my views from,
Right.
So yeah, I think it is still carrying on, because there is people being taught, and fair enough. You know what? A lot of them were oppressed. A lot of them were treated very, very unfairly. And yeah, they've been beaten by the cops. They've been tossed around, like families been killed and stuff because of apartheid. Like my grandfather was exiled out of South Africa. He was beaten. He was tortured by government, by police and stuff. So,
because your grandfather worked very closely with Nelson Mandela. Is that correct?
Yeah, he did. He was was in charge of Nelson Mandela's international affairs.
Yeah. No small deal, right?
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, there's quite a history with my grandfather Nelson Mandela. I got pictures of my grandfather Nelson Mandela, and you see a bunch of bodyguards sitting behind the two of them and stuff, right? It's pretty cool. So in charge of the international affairs would mean, so when anytime somebody comes outside of the country, from outside of the country to visit Nelson Mandela or to meet Nelson Mandela, they would have to go through my grandfather.
Right.
So when Muhammad Ali came to come and meet Nelson Mandela, it was all dealt through with my grandfather, and there's even a picture of Nelson Mandela, Muhammad Ali, and my grandfather.
Wow. Yeah. What year was that?
This would be in the early 90s after apartheid ended.
Right.
So I'm not too sure what year, but somewhere around the early 90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so when was your grandfather exiled?
Okay, so it would probably be in the 70s or early 80s that he was exiled.
Because Nelson Mandela, he was arrested and he was put in jail for 27 years.
I think, 27 years.
But your grandfather was able to get out.
Yeah.
And he moved to Canada.
Yeah, he was exiled, and Canada accepted him in and his family in as like refugees, basically.
Right.
My grandfather was with, I think, two other people when they got exiled. One person, his name is Ahmed Timor, he's quite quite famous. There's even a little area in South Africa in Joburg that's called Amatimo Square, or not. Sorry, there's a Amatimo building or something like that there, right? But yeah, now Amatimo got thrown off the building.
Oh, he was assassinated.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So he was thrown off the building. Made it look like, I think they made it look like a suicide. We have like a whole bunch of books on the Amatimo books,
right,
sitting in the lounge. But yes, and my grandfather and the other guy got exiled out of the country.
Yeah. So this guy who was assassinated, was he like Nelson Mandela? Like what did he do? Was he just another civil rights advocate?
Yeah.
Or anti-apartheid?
Yeah,
advocate?
yeah. Basically, that's kind of what they did. Freedom fighters.
Yeah.
You know, that's that's what you could call them.
But it was all mostly peaceful protest, correct?
For the most part, I mean, there comes a point where nobody can hear peace anymore. So there were a few violent protests. There was things being blown up, you know. Then they would call it terrorism acts,
right,
against the government, you know.
Right.
So
the government would be killing protesters, or was it kind of both ways?
Yeah, there was there's, what is it called? I think it's Heritage Day. There was a bunch of school kids protesting outside the school. Not violent, but this is more just before. This is even just before violent protests actually started.
Yeah.
This was one of the first things that was like really shocked South Africans. So these were all school kids, and they were protesting, and there's a gate, and I guess they were shaking the gate and stuff, and one of the police officers opened fire and shot, I think it was a 16-year-old boy, and that started a spiral of more violent protests, right? But that's, Heritage Day is even a public holiday in South Africa.
And that was the day when this 16-year-old was killed.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the anti-apartheid movement really picked up speed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is probably in the 70s this happened?
I believe so. I believe it will be 70s, 80s, somewhere around there, maybe 70s, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess in the sense that, you know, it picked up speed, that it became more of like an upheaval in like a riot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it became a riot. There was a lot of kids were killed that day. I can't remember the exact numbers. This is something that we taught at school as well, but you know, you just can't remember these things anymore. They tell us the kid's name and how many kids were killed and everything as well, right? But it was a big thing.
Like mostly teenagers, like 16.
Oh yeah, no, it was high school, right? It was high school kids. So it was all high school kids that were killed. And there happened to be a photographer at the protest.
Right.
So there was pictures taken of what happened, right?
And were these students black students?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then how long did it last like this for?
All these protests?
Yeah.
I would say this probably went on until apartheid ended.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There was a lot of if there was a protest, it was quick violent retaliation from the government, right?
Right.
So
they would put it down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess people were a little bit more hesitant to fight against the cops,
right?
But more then, right? So it would have to be a more serious thing for it to become a riot or a protest.
But something would happen,
yeah,
and then boom, a riot again. Somebody would get killed, another riot.
Yeah,
not necessarily unlike what is going on in the United States, correct?
Yeah.
You know, there's these cooling periods, and then there's this like, we got to make a change.
Yeah.
Right? And with George Floyd, he's killed, and now here we are again. Mm-hmm. It went from, there was a bit of a cooling, and now we're into this again.
Yeah.
So it almost seems like there's a similar trajectory, that this is just going to keep happening until there is change.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Was apartheid successful?
Do you mean ending apartheid was successful?
Excuse me. Yes. Whoa. Yeah. Ending apartheid. What does apartheid mean?
I'm not sure exactly what it translates to, but it's I think it might be something to do with the segregation of races or something like that. You know.
But it's a word in. Is it like an Afrikaans word?
I think originally it is an Afrikaner word, or maybe Dutch, but it's now used regularly, right? Like it's now just like an English word, basically.
Yeah. So, in ending apartheid, has that been successful?
Well, it is. Yes and no. I mean, there is. Like definitely everybody's free now. I can go into white area. In fact, a few of the white areas are now black areas, or not really black areas, but not really white areas anymore. You know, mixed. Very mixed, very mixed. Right. So, in that sense, it has improved there, but there's a lot of other problems with apartheid ending as well. Like we have corrupt governments, right?
Right.
We have police that are underpaid taking bribes. We have a health system that's falling apart. You know, education system that's falling apart. So there's a lot of other issues, and it's too bad because it's actually really it's a beautiful nation, but it's still a growing nation. It's not ready yet. It needs to grow a little bit more, you know. So there's a lot of things that needs work, tons of things. So in a sense, it definitely is good that it ended, but we need a government that is actually in control.
Right.
This government that is not in control of anything anymore is creating a lot more problems. Like our crime rate is insane, you know. So we do need more control. We need the government to come and take control of the things that are bad in the country. So yeah, it's good and it's not, right?
Right. Yeah. Because and my knowledge on this is amateur at best. But what's happening in places like the United States, you know, and Canada for that matter, is there's a dominant group, right? White people, whatever you want to call it, in the United States. And then there's black people, there's Latinos, right? And they've all been, like, in the States, they have the same rights, but the communities that they live in are, you know, they're poverty stricken. And this is systemic, meaning that, you know, after World War II, families came home from serving, you know, fighting against a racist regime, the Nazis, and there was a GI Bill, and white families were given money to buy houses, but black families were specifically not given money. So where did they go? Cheap housing.
Yeah.
And when you talk to some people, you know, and you ask them, like, for me, I can be like a bit of an undercover cop, right? Because I hear some of the shit that white people say, and, you know, not to be a snitch or anything, but I'm like, okay, well, why do you think that? And then you hear some pretty crazy explanations, like, well, not to be a racist, but they all live in cheap housing, right? Why is that?
Yeah.
That's the example right there. It's not because of something that is within them as a people, a culture. It's just that's what's been created for them, right? So not unlike apartheid, where they kept whites and all the other races separate. But we're seeing that here, but the language is different. Is that true?
It's just it was a lot more strict.
Yeah, it was very explicit.
It was law.
Yeah.
Right. So it was law, and if you broke the law, you would be punished.
And what were some of the punishments for this?
Oh well, most of the time the cops would beat them, take them back to their neighborhood, drop them, just leave them in the area again.
Right.
Sometimes they would get arrested. It depends on what they did and who the cop is. Just like
But if you're black, colored, or Indian, and you're in a white neighborhood when you shouldn't be,
you would most likely get beaten and taken to jail.
that's so fucked up, right?
Yeah.
And you have kids. There's a kid in the United States. I'm drawing a blank on the name, but there's this guy George Zimmerman who's following this kid. He's just walking home like it's a dark night, and it's fucking scary being a black person in a white neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like I don't know that, but people have told me that. Like in the States, I don't know what people are gonna do, right? And this kid was walking through, and this guy came up and fought him and killed him, right? And he got off. Like he didn't serve a day in jail.
Holy.
Right?
Yeah.
How is that any different than what's kind of was going on with apartheid?
It's not. It's racism. It's just racism.
So how do you think, and this, if you had the answer, you'd be a billionaire, but what do you think the solution is for things like racism?
I think things need to be equal. Like your rights need to be equal. Because even in the States right now, it's happening where, like you said, a black person doing the same crime as a white person will get charged more. You know, there needs to be equal rights for everybody, regardless of their right, or regardless of the color of their skin, or where they grew up, or whatever. They should be given equal opportunities. Right. Same goes with South Africa right now. They have a thing called BEE. BEE is basically allowing black people, giving them more opportunities to get careers and get places in jobs, right, where people that are not black wouldn't have that same opportunity. So a white person wouldn't have that same opportunity. So, for example, when it comes to the grades that they need in getting into college or university, a black person would need less grades than a white person,
right,
or an Indian or a colored person. Initially, it's something that makes sense because they try to level out the workforce.
Yeah.
But now it's carried on for way too long, and now you get a lot of colored and Indian people that can't get into college because their grades are not above 75 or 80%, where they've been trying just as hard and working just as hard as a black person.
So it's not equal.
It's not equal, no. I don't think that's... I think it should always be equal opportunities. Anybody, whether you're black, white, colored, Indian, Asian, doesn't matter. You should have the same opportunity as the blackest or the whitest person that's in the room,
Well, it's the same as like TV shows. Like, you ever watch TV shows and there's like, they have to show you a gay couple and you're like, okay, like, I get it.
Yeah.
Instead of just trying to force people to accept difference or whatever, it's like, let's base it on a meritocracy. You don't get the job just because you're XYZ. You get the job because you're the best person for the job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be based on grades because, I'd be cleaning dishes at McDonald's still if it was based on grades.
Yeah.
I wasn't good at school.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I found my way.
Yeah.
Right? We all find our way.
Yeah.
And we can do things that make sense to us, that implement our skills that maybe somebody else who was a straight A student can't do. Right? So I agree with you that it's about a meritocracy. It shouldn't be because, you're a transgender from space or whatever. You know what I mean? It should not matter where you're from.
Yeah.
It should matter what you're able to do. Because it almost seems like if we just cater to one group, then that kind of can make the other groups resentful
Mm-hmm.
of them.
Yeah.
Right? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about being inclusive, but not doing it just for the sake of being inclusive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting in entertainment. You know, you watch that, you have people like, you have Dave Chappelle, right? Mm-hmm. The stand-up comedian. And what's going on with Black Lives Matter? Everybody's like, Dave Chappelle, what's going on? Why does he have to be the spokesperson for anybody?
Yeah.
That would be like if, a white kid got killed and they all went to Bradley Cooper and they were like, hey, Bradley Cooper, how do you think about this? I don't fucking know, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or if I was the only white person in a country and there was crazy shit happening in Canada, and people came up to me and they all asked, hey, you know what's happening with this? You know what's happening? Like, man, I don't know. Right? It's just, it's interesting how we choose to see things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we see one thing and we think that that's the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really, it's pretty interesting what's that we end up going to certain people for certain things.
Yeah.
But then you think back in apartheid days, Nelson Mandela was a spokesperson, or Malcolm X was a spokesperson,
Right.
I think it's just sometimes more where the wisdom and the advice would come from.
Right.
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 So that's kind of where, like for me, if Nelson was talking, I would be listening to Nelson Mandela.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. But even Dave Chappelle said, he's like, let everybody else speak.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think we, correct me on this one, but we lean a little too much to celebrities to hear what they have to say, when really everybody's already speaking on this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What I kind of have a problem with is when we try to have these conversations and they're never going to be smooth, right? Like, let's talk about white privilege. Let's talk about, Black Lives Matter, XYZ, whatever it might be, Me Too movement, right? It's going to be uncomfortable because we're having to look within ourselves. What becomes a problem is when they say things like Black Lives Matter and I'm asking questions and somebody calls me a racist, which hasn't happened yet. But apparently that's what a lot of, white folk are telling me. They're like, well, everyone says I'm a racist. Well, there is a problem with that, right? Because anybody who might be a little bit radical, that's going to make them go the other way. Just like in the Me Too movement, that if you call somebody, a guy who's trying to get a date with a girl a pervert, you're going to lose people trying to help you out, right?
Yeah.
So I guess my question is how do we encourage the conversation?
How would we encourage that? Like, thinking about the Me Too, because it is a touchy subject.
Yeah.
There was a lot of fake claims happening.
Yeah.
So it does become a sensitive subject, right? Do I agree that everybody should be posting Me Too, Me Too, Me Too on Facebook, saying that I was, whatever happened to me,
sexually assaulted,
something like that happened to me as well? I don't agree with that. I think that is something that you need to talk to someone that is going to help you and give you advice on it. That's where it should be. Is sexual abuse a problem? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And it's something that needs to be dealt with. I think it needs to be one of a lot more seriously punishable.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah. Well, I and this is coming from, I own an 80-pound pit bull. I'm not at risk of being sexually assaulted, and I'm not at risk of someone being racist towards me, right? So I'm not the best person to say, well, I disagree with that, because that is just not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What I am saying is I want to be as helpful as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to need you to tell me how to be as helpful as possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that when we, when some people say like, well, you're racist, you don't get it, or you're a pervert or whatever. Not saying that that's what anybody's doing, but that can make it lose its power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Its momentum,
mm-hmm.
And then people question the authenticity of the movement,
mm-hmm.
right? So, did you hear about that comedian who, Krista Ilya?
No.
And he's talking to like 16-year-old girls?
No.
Yeah, like that's messed up.
Yeah, no, that is sick.
Right?
It's sick.
So, but then you have all these celebrities speaking up like, wow, that's so wrong, like,
yeah.
Stop trying to save your own ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
So when it comes to sexual abuse and things like that there, I am, and maybe it's the South African in me, the fighting nation in me, but when I hear about something like that happening, I want to be violent.
Yeah.
It's something that needs to be punished, where somebody needs a good beating. That they will never ever want to do that again.
Yeah.
That's what I think about sexual abuse. Some people say, no, it must go to law, blah, 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 blah. I don't think the law does enough. I think they get out way too easily. They sit in protective custody inside prison, because if they're outside anywhere else, they're going to get beaten.
Right.
So they're sitting in protective custody in prison, relatively safe. And then they get out in a few years when this person's...
Yeah, they've ruined someone's life.
Yeah, they've ruined someone's life, and it would almost be better to leave them for dead, because you don't leave them with the mental abuse of being sexually abused.
Yeah.
So I think that it needs to be something that is more seriously punished. Take them out of protective custody in prison.
Well, I mean, that's like, sexual assault is just such like a... I can't imagine, because I have a daughter, so I could be all liberal and say, yeah, they need to go to jail. If someone ever fucking, did that to my daughter, I'd shoot them in the face.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is incriminating, but anyways, right? I agree with you.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is that, Morgan Freeman, somebody said, oh, Morgan Freeman said I had a nice ass or something like that, and then he got into trouble, right? That is not the same.
No, it's not.
Right? And that's kind of what I'm saying, is that we need to, like,
classify.
You need to make, like, what happened to Bill Cosby, or what happened to... there's an owner of like some massive clothing chain. He's a Canadian. He was sexually assaulting women.
Okay.
That's it. Game over for you.
Yeah.
Right? Life in prison.
Yeah.
Because you're using your power.
Yeah.
To ruin people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I just don't get that. So.
And then because they're celebrities and rich, they can use their power to get out of
prison. Yeah, I just don't, like, you're a celebrity.
Yeah.
You could talk to anybody you want. Why are you talking to 16-year-olds?
Yeah.
Right? And he knew they were. You know what I mean? And he even played, like, pedophiles on his shows, like, as a joke. That, to me, is like, what the...
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't even know how we got into this subject.
I don't know.
Well, I think I was talking about movements.
Yes.
And keeping them real.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because people are going to try and distract us from what's going on.
Yeah. Right?
Which kind of brings me to my next point. That's COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
COVID. It's definitely real. I think it's definitely here. It's definitely real. There is people dying from it. I personally think that this was planned. Sort of. I mean, I think that I think there's something behind the whole story.
Yeah,
you
like
know?
released.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think something happened and.
Oops! The bat flew out of the lab.
Yeah.
Somebody try and stop it. Yeah,
I can't run that fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think something along those lines. I think something happened where it was released purposely or by accident, but it was something. I think there's something to do with the whole thing. And I think that they are dramatizing it a lot more than it should be dramatized.
Right.
And that kind of has me questioning it as well, because
if they're making it bigger than it really is.
They're making it bigger than it
maybe
really
not.
is.
Yeah.
And usually, what I find with the media is any big story that's going on, there's something weird going on behind the scenes as well.
Right.
So, almost as if it's a cover up.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting because the whole COVID thing is going on now, and here this Black Lives Matter thing pops up, right? And it's overtaking COVID on media, on social media. It's overtaking.
Yeah.
You know, so what are they doing with COVID? Are they throwing COVID under the rug? Like, you don't hear much about COVID.
Yeah.
There's no one like being like, oh, COVID memes. You know, like it's dying out. It's all everything's Black Lives Matter memes now, and you know, that's what everybody's talking about. So it's very weird that the media will find something bigger to cover up something smaller or something else that's going on.
Right.
So I really think the whole thing is pretty sinister. I think it's this. I think there's something going on. I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but that's just what I think, right?
Well, and the other thing too is that, like, if you think, you know, not to sound apocalyptic or anything, but the human species, we're what, at almost 8 billion people? And you know how we're like, save the earth, save the earth. There's that girl, you know, how dare you? You know, the earth is trying to save us.
Yeah.
Right? But at some point, it's going to be like, you guys are a lost cause. Like, if an alien flew down here, he'd be like, what the fuck? Fly right off, right? You guys can't even get along, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, is this going to bring us closer together?
That's what I mean.
Is this going to keep pulling us apart?
I mean, I feel like it should. I feel like it should be pulling everybody closer together. People should take advantage of the fact that they can be spending time with their families. You know, you should realize how that someone can die and you can't be able to, like, you won't be allowed to say goodbye to them. So treat them properly from the get-go, you know.
That's great advice.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things we should learn from it. Me personally, I needed a break from work, and I'm pretty happy that I got laid off. For me, I've been working so hard since I've been in Canada. So for me, this was just, I think it's just that what my whole system needed, you know, just
a reboot,
like calm down, you know, like that's what I'm looking at it as. Like I'm looking at this thing as a break for me, you know, like stop, pause, think about life, and figure your stuff out, and then get going again. You know, that's what I'm kind of looking at it as. It's I know it's a lot of people that died from it, but for me, it's personally, it's a blessing to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, because you're moving back to South Africa.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Is this because of the COVID being laid off that you're like, I'm going back?
No. This is something that I've decided before. December, I decided that this is really kind of what I want to do. Yeah, no, I've it's more because of it's just home, and it has a lot more to do with who I am when I'm home. You know, like I can be myself. For example, now when I'm talking even to you, I talk in a way that you can understand, right?
Right. Yeah.
You know, so I'm just like changing a few words. I do it now. I'm doing it subconsciously, you know. But I am like twisting my accent a little bit, like, to make sure you can understand, kind of thing, right? Because that's one of the things that when I moved here, I'm talking English, but it doesn't sound like it, you know, because my accent was so strong, you know.
Is it faster? Would you say your accent in Johannesburg?
Yes, I would normally talk a bit faster because I'm just like speaking.
Yeah.
Just off my mother tongue kind of thing,
Right.
you know, like it's just like normal for me, you know.
Yeah, like Scottish people. I don't know what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
Because they have different words for different associations.
Yeah.
So kind of my last question.
Okay.
And it has to do with the pace of Canada. How would you describe the pace of Canada versus the pace of South Africa?
It's very interesting because summertime pace and wintertime pace is very different over here. Wintertime is all about wake up, work, come home, sleep in Canada, right?
Because it's dark.
It's dark.
Yeah.
At 4 o'clock, it's dark, right? So it's more just get your work done, go home, and it's all about work. I think in the summertime, there's a very relaxed pace about everything, you know. Everyone's kind of like, it's holiday time now, wanna chill, like school's out, you know, so parents have more time to spend time with the kids. It's sunsets late, so people come home from work like, oh, what do you want to do? Oh, let's go to the park. You know, like there's still there's tons of daylight, so everyone's kind of more on a chill vibe, and everyone's just enjoying it, you know, for the little bit of summer day that we have, right? The hot days that we get, everyone's enjoying it more on a slow pace. I think that in Canada it is surviving and getting ahead in life is a lot harder than it would be in South Africa. Because it is so expensive to live here.
Right.
Extremely expensive to live here. Like you can't, if you're working minimum wage or anything under less than $20 an hour, you pretty much have to be living with somebody.
Yeah.
Either a roommate or someone else, or like a spouse.
Well, housing here is insane.
Yeah. So making $2,500 a month and still trying to be able to drive to your job, you can't get a place on your own.
Right.
So you have to be sharing a house or something along those lines. So it does make it hard to get ahead. Like you have to make sure that you do get a good job or get a good business running so that you can actually get ahead,
right.
You know? And put some money away to be able to buy a house. And I think once you get to that point, things become a bit easier, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, just to get over that little bit of a peak to be able to start saving money is extremely hard in Canada.
Right.
You know?
And that's part of the reason why you're moving back.
Yes and no. I've finally made it to a position in my life where if I want to buy a house in Canada right now, I can buy a house in Canada. You know, credit's good,
right.
Money saved up, everything like that, right? But the one thing I realized about South Africa is, again, on the context of the same question, is so if you're in South Africa and you're trying to get a job, it's extremely hard to find a job. Right? Yeah. Poverty is really, really bad in South Africa. It's so hard to find a job. And then there's BEE as well, which I told you about.
What does that stand for again?
I think it might be Black Education Empowerment. I can't remember.
Okay.
I'm not too sure. But so with BEE, they have to fill in certain positions, or they have to fill in a certain amount of positions in a company,
right,
with
black people,
right?
Yeah.
Which makes sense, especially because everything was white dominant, right?
Yeah.
But it does make it hard for me not being black to get a job.
And they would know, right? They would say, "Oh, you're not black," even though you're half.
Yeah.
Say yeah.
Yeah, because
that's weird. So it's like gone the other way.
It has gone the other way.
Just based on my observation of what you're telling me.
Yeah, no, I think it has to some extent gone the other way. There's a lot of racist to white people. There was the farm killings and everything like that in South Africa, right? I definitely do not agree with any of that stuff that's going on. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. But
did that happen recently?
Oh yeah, this is happening in the past couple of years.
Farm killings?
Yeah, they've been black people have been going into white people farms and killing them and taking over their farms.
Oh shit!
Yeah, it's a huge problem. It's you can't be doing things like that because they want the land. They think that they have the right to the land, right? Which they don't. And you are creating a problem inside South Africa because you want the land, but you're not a farmer. That farm is there to give us food,
right?
But you don't know what to do with the food,
right?
So it is a big problem. It's stupid, right?
Yeah.
But sorry, I'm going off topic here.
Well, no, it's still very. It's all related. Yeah.
So in South Africa, getting a job and you don't get paid like you get paid pennies in South Africa.
But because you're able to save up here.
Yes.
Okay.
Now I can go back to South Africa. Things is cheaper in South Africa to buy things, to buy a house, to buy businesses.
Yeah.
So that's my plan. I have my money saved up, so I'm gonna go over there and I'm gonna start my own thing. I don't want to work for somebody else because I don't want to work hard and get $1,000 a month.
Right.
Right. Even $1,000 a month is somewhat considered a good salary.
Yeah. Here that's like below minimum wage.
That's below minimum wage. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like around average, people are earning $500 to $800 a month.
Wow.
So.
But things are cheaper.
Housing's a bit cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
The groceries and food, I noticed when I went back now, I was astonished how expensive it is. It's insane.
In South Africa, food.
Yeah, it's almost the same price as here, which is ridiculous. I don't know how.
Because it's
don't know how it went up so high, but it's gotten super expensive. I really don't know how people are living like that, but
that might be part of the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely a big problem.
What's the business that you're hoping to start up?
So I'm kind of looking into going into student accommodation. So buying a house and hopefully one that's renovated already, so I don't have to spend any extra cash.
Yeah.
It's set it up for student accommodation.
That's like a hotel for students.
Basically, yeah.
Ingenious.
Yeah.
Why didn't I think of that? Yeah.
Yeah, so basically buying a house and completely renovating it, putting like 10 rooms inside the one house, and you have people staying in each room, kind of thing, right?
Oh, that's
Yeah, so it's a common thing in South Africa that's going on right now, especially in the areas that are close to the universities and stuff.
And then that would be in Johannesburg.
Yeah. Right. So actually, the area that I grew up in is called Brixton. A lot of the houses, actually the house that we were living in is now student accommodation as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's a university town then?
Not a university town. It's just because the university is pretty close by.
Right.
It's like sort of in the area, right?
Okay.
So it's people. It's a good place for student accommodation to be set up, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm just looking at the time here too. It's going red. So I think that's it telling us that we should
it's almost over.
Wrap up. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything? Are you gonna miss it here?
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna miss Canada.
Well, I'm gonna miss you.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna miss you too, man.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go snowboarding as well before I left.
Not much of a year for that though. But
I know it wasn't. It was bad. But yeah, no, I'm gonna miss Canada. I'm gonna miss the summer times especially. Well, and winter times for snowboarding. But it's beautiful here, man. And for the most part, most people are so welcoming and warming and everything. Like I met you, like you were super welcoming and warm and everything. So
thank you. I try to make that one of my attributes. Don't have too many of them. So. Yeah.
That and asking a lot of questions.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, no, Canada's good, man, and I'm so grateful for it. It got me here. It got me started. I definitely wouldn't have been where I am today without being here. So I'm really grateful for it. I probably would have been put in jail if I was still living in South Africa. So I'm very lucky. It's a good place to be. It definitely got me where I needed to be and made me a much better person,
I'm glad to hear that. Well, thank you very much.
No problem, Rob.
Okay, and that was excellent scotch as well. So, cheers.
Cheers, man. That was good.
to South Africa.
A growing nation, right?